I grew up in a time where sports for young girls really wasn't a topic of discussion. It was just starting to emerge. So I think about being a teenager, even in middle school in the 70s. And yes, there were women beginning to really break into sports, the Olympics, but it still wasn't a topic that was, I think, really delved into. It wasn't expected that young girls would do sports. And I know I often felt limited, like there were things I felt I couldn't do or wasn't encouraged to do. Well, thankfully, times have changed, and now we have young girls, young women in sports, such an exciting time. But the challenges they face, even for the parents, the grandparents. So if you're saying, oh, I don't have kids, well, think about your grandkids, your nieces. How can you support this generation, bridge that gap, and help them to really stay in sports? Because it's my understanding that about a third drop off. They don't stay in. So we're going to be delving into this topic in depth. Today I have with me Ashley Wiles. Ashley helps young girl athletes to build confidence and mental strength, as well as helping their parents and grandparents to support their daughters and granddaughters. She is a TEDx speaker, life coach, three-time Ironman triathlete, very impressive, mental performance coach, and an activist for mental health. She is also the founder of Soul Girls. She is a fierce advocate for young girls in sports and has received numerous awards and recognition, including being named 2016 Coach of the Year by Brooks Running. How cool is that? Ashley, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. What an intro.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. As I said, I think it's really important. We want to be mentors to these young girls, and what you're doing is much needed because I'm sure the mindset is such a big part. I mean, even as an adult competing in bodybuilding and getting up on that stage, I had to overcome so many mindset obstacles. And many of those obstacles went all the way back to how I perceived myself as a young girl. So, what brought you to this type of work? How did you get here?
That is a great question. Originally, more than a decade ago, I was really inspired, or maybe changed, inspired is not the right word, by a girl who actually died by suicide. And her story was so intense that it was about bullying and being bullied and not having that community, not having support. And it just hit me like a rock. Like, I need to do something about this. And I think it hit me so hard because I knew that I was that girl too. And I wish that I'd had more mental health tools, or that we could have talked about anxiety or ADHD or stress, even within sports. Sometimes we assume that sports girls are fine because they do sports, but it's not, well, they're human and we still need help. And so her story really inspired me to create communities of girls. And now, a decade later, are still creating communities, and now online even. So we create these spaces where girls can learn mental health tools to propel them in sports and connect with mentors and learn how to deal with the really difficult moments.
What do you think are the reasons why girls will drop out? I mean, that's pretty big amount of girls not following through, a third.
Yeah. Yeah, one third of girls is going to drop out of sports by adolescence, which means that we have a lot of girls dropping out of sports, right? And of course, like, this doesn't mean that everybody needs to get to pro levels, but what we're talking about is just playing, like, keep playing and keep having fun, keep enjoying sport, keep moving your body and finding outlets for stress and for pressure of all different things. And the reasons why girls are dropping out are so varied. It can be anything from body image to not being supported with their periods to not feeling like they belong. But if we could group it into like one big category, we'd probably say psychological safety and just not feeling like they belong anymore in that sport. And that's really crappy. It's a crappy feeling to feel like you're not good enough, or you're not safe, whether it's from the coach or from friends or from teammates, or even just in your own mind. right? And so for example, like how safe do I feel to speak my mind? Am I going to be sitting on the bench all season if I say what I really think? Or is it okay just to be myself and however it is that I show up? And when we don't have the tools to be able to either talk about it or be ourselves, then it's really easy to spiral.
And I think it stays with us as I was talking about my own experience being in bodybuilding. It's funny because you at times do feel like you're that little girl again, sort of having those insecurities. I mean, I'm sure you've competed. I'm sure you've had those moments of doubt, like, can I do this? And how will I do? And if you're a competitive person, like just a naturally competitive person, I think that can add to that pressure that we put on ourselves.
Oh, totally, totally. And there's pressure from everything. There's pressure from parents, like even unknowingly often. And parents don't know when they say things like "you've got this" or "be your best out there." They're like, actually that's not helping me because I don't have this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm doing. There's things that we can say to parents and or as grandparents that really help support them more, especially when they're working on tangible tools like we teach them in the inner game, is like specifically learning like a bounce back routine or learning how to navigate their thoughts. So when the negative thoughts comes up, like validating them and say, okay, it's okay to be scared right now, and like here are some other ways of thinking about this, right? So catching ourselves in the act of thinking before we
Right.
spiral, before that pressure gets too hot. Because yeah, it can happen in the middle of the game. Like we look over, we see our parents and they're like shaking their heads or they're like, putting their hands on their head. And you're thinking as an athlete, oh no, I've just disappointed my parents. Like I haven't shown up the way that they expect me to, or they're putting in so much money into my sport and so much time and they're being here for me. It's just this like it's this natural pressure that we give kids because of the normalcy of it, but it's difficult. It makes it hard.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you really hit on a good point because parents can unknowingly put that pressure on. They want their kids to succeed. They're excited. I think sometimes maybe even they're living out what they wanted to do through the kids. I've
Oh,
seen that
100%.
as well. And so then the disappointment of the parents transfers to the kids. The other thing I've seen is like comments made about someone else's child, and it's not always somebody screaming it. Maybe they're just saying it to the person next to them. And it's not that the child hears that, but the parent hears that, maybe passes on those feelings toward their children.
Oh, 100%. There there are all sorts of parents on the sidelines and in all the sports. No matter what you get. I was actually speaking with one of my groups yesterday, and their challenge this week was to tell their parents on how they like to be supported, on how they would like to feel supported. Most of them were really scared about doing this. They were like, "Oh no, no way, I can't." And that's a really hard position for her to be in, to say like, I feel worried when I see you in the stands, I'm like yelling, or I feel worried when you yell at me, and so I might not want you to come to my competitions. Like that is a really heavy conversation, and it would be really hard for a parent to hear. Heck, it would be really hard for like an adult to have an adult conversation like that, right? But there's some really unacceptable behaviors happening at sports. And when we're talking about girls staying in sports, we really need to support them in all levels. Like find out what it is that they actually need. Like do they need tools to deal with their stress? How do they need to be supported? What are the best things I can say as a parent just to really support my kid? Like I love to watch you play.
Mm,
And I'm so glad I could be here for you today. Those are the kinds of things that have nothing to do with how they play. It really just has to do with like my relationship as a parent to my kid and making them feel good about being themselves, giving them
mhm.
that safe space because sports should feel safe to do, even at the most
Yes.
competitive levels.
Yes, I agree. It should be something that's positive, whatever level somebody is playing at. Just the idea of being physically active, being part of a sport, learning that resilience, learning the discipline it takes to prepare for whatever that is invaluable. But do you see differences between, like, are you primarily dealing with kids who are playing team sports? Or do you see issues with the more solo individual sports. Like I did running for years and years, and it's just you, your shoes, and you're out there running. You're not part of a team. And I imagine being part of a team is more pressure.
It really depends. I work with girls in team sports, in individual sports, in sports that function as a team, but they compete individually, like swimming or running. And I think we have all similar pressures. Like we all have minds and we're all figuring out how to navigate through the negative feelings. We all have parents. Well, not all of us. We all have, I hope that many of us have like a supportive person in our lives that is showing up, taking us to games, bringing us home. The pressures are different. And the other part is that like sport is just like this tiny little piece. We also have like the day to day, which is like navigating friendships and schools and extracurriculars. And all of these tools that we teach about sport and how to stay in sport are really applicable to our lives. And often friendships is one of those major factors for girls in their tweens and teen ages. How their friends react and how their friends' parents react and is going to play a huge role in us too and influence us on whether or not we stay in sport or whether we don't. Yeah, I think that from the program that we deliver, it's like a 6-week program. Every girl gets something different. Like she might think this is for me and it's not for somebody else. And it just really like sits with her differently than it would for another girl.
And that pressure that they feel, not just from the parents, but maybe from one another on a team. If something happens, maybe it's they're not their best game or their best play. Do you see that having an effect on girls too?
Absolutely. I mean, if you've ever been in the car on the ride home with a teen girl after a bad day, like you know that's a very awkward car ride. And a lot of deep breaths are probably happening in the front seat because it's so hard when we don't have tools, like really tangible tools to say, okay, here's how I can critique my play or critique my experience at this game or this competition, as opposed to compare myself and criticize myself, which is so much easier to do. And like usually go directly there, right? I did this bad. I did this bad. I can't believe she didn't pass to me, or like drama gets in the way. So a girl looks at you differently and all of a sudden some drama has started and she's not passing to her. And so it's messing up the whole team dynamic. And now you're not scoring and not losing, or losing, not scoring. And it can make some really difficult dynamics.
I bet. I bet. I was kind of flashing back to one time when I played, so funny, mud volleyball. And it was on a team with my husband, and he like turned into somebody else because volleyball was his game. It wasn't mine. It was all supposed to be for fun. So I was missing shots. And I remember he was just coming down on me. I'm like, who is this guy and what is he doing? So that's what I was thinking of, that kind of pressure
Hilarious.
that teammates can put on one another, especially if they've really got that competitive spirit and really want to win. Of course, we all want to win. That could be a factor. So, how do you teach these girls to handle things like pressure and disappointment? I mean, disappointment is huge.
Totally. I also think you have to tell us more about mud volleyball.
I know it was definitely a thing here in Albuquerque. I don't even know if they still do it. This was many, many years ago, but yeah, they set up the nets and everything with this. It's just mud everywhere, and you're sinking in. So you're trying to get the ball, and there's no way you can play good because you go to move and you can't move, and afterward
Oh my God.
there's mud everywhere, like you shower for days. But yeah, it was a funny thing that we did.
That sounds hilarious. And yeah, I can also relate to not recognizing somebody like as soon as you get into competitive sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, who is this man? And he's not nice anymore. And what is happening here is,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean that can happen with parents too, like just like family dynamics. Like you get this person is your anchor and then you get onto the field and all of a sudden they turn into like a win at all costs type person, and you're like, as a child it can be scary and make you not want to play more sports, right?
yeah, absolutely. That performance anxiety, I can
Yeah,
imagine, would come
yeah,
into play.
yeah. Sorry, you asked me about disappointment, like how to deal with
Yes.
the
Yes.
disappointment of losing. I think we can totally navigate our thoughts and change them. So we teach a technique that's catch it, change it, and we bring in the work of Byron Katie to
Mm.
talk about literally the work, right? Like to question those thoughts. Is this true? Would I tell my best friend this? And so, I mean, disappointment sounds like something different for everybody, but let's just take the example of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to be on this team. And I mean, the first step would just be to catch it, catch that
Mhm.
thought and notice it. And that awareness is huge. And I think, the first few weeks in our program, a lot of it is just awareness. It's becoming super aware that these thoughts happen and that we can stop and actually think about that. And the second step is to catch it. So, is this true? Would I tell this to my best friend? And usually the answer is no, right? And so then you start to think, well, maybe there's something else here, and that's the option to change it. And so I'm really not all of like, I hate fake positivity. Like, don't come at me with like, oh, you
Oh,
did
yeah.
great today, or you like really crushed it out there, or, like, no, I didn't. And that's not like, that doesn't feel like a solid change. It's too opaque. Like it's way on the other side. What what I think that you can do instead is find something that's also true, but not as heavy. So if the thought was, I'm not good enough to be on this team, we can change it to today was really hard and I am still learning.
I love that. I love that because it's opening a door like, okay, how can we improve in the future? There's room for improvement
Exactly.
and looking at this in a positive way. And then it's real life because these things happen with, you go for the job and you don't get it and somebody else gets the job or you have a tough day at work or you have a boss that's unreasonable, all of the things that we're going to face as adults and it can kind of mimic what happens I think in sports. Now you had a great post on your I was stalking your Instagram.
Oh, thanks.
You have a great post on your Instagram about the development of the mind and certain tools that we don't develop as until we're really young women, like perhaps into our 20s. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, our brains just aren't fully developed as teens. And what makes it really sorry, I heard an echo on my end. Cancel that. Our brains aren't fully developed until our early 20s, mid 20s. And so the idea that we can make really good decisions all the time isn't really true. We are still learning. It's kind of like being a toddler, if you will. Like toddlers going through this like huge brain shift as well, where they take risks and they don't think about it. And it's the same with the teen brain. It's just not fully developed. And so what ends up happening is lots of things, but I'm trying to think of like which post you were.
Let me see if I can because I've jotted down some notes. So hold on.
Which one are you
Okay, here
actually
we
talking
go.
about?
Yeah. You made a post about our brains are really not considered fully equipped for emotional regulation and decision making until about our mid 20s. Plus, we don't yet typically have the life experience to teach us. And well, I added that in. I thought of the life experience because it's almost like a catalog of things in your mind. You've been through all these situations, and the longer we're on this planet, the more we pull up and go, okay, I've been in this situation before. Okay, this
Right.
isn't new. But when you're a young girl, it's all new. Everything's new.
Yeah, yeah. So, like specifically, it's our like prefrontal cortex, right? And this is the brain part that's responsible for decision making, emotional regulation, self awareness. And so we have these really big feelings, and reacting before thinking, is a challenge, right? So yeah, it's real life, and it's also gameplay. Like, how do we do that in sports? And we are going to get through this. It's really hard to, I think, be a teen and not know that you're full, like you think you're an adult, like you think you're already there, and you think you're making good decisions, but it's just not, you're not yet fully there. And we know this as parents, right?
Right.
But when you're kids, it's like finding that right balance of like, okay, so as a parent, how do I parent this and how do I support this person who is feeling like she's going like quickly out of hand. And the cool thing is that like, yeah, our brains are super adaptable and their kids are like a sponge. So they're watching you, they're learning from you, they're watching how you react. And this is how we learn best. But so how do we actually support that as parents? I would say like curiosity, like just being in the moment with them and letting them have their feelings and validating those feelings. And even if they're really big, like, yeah, this feels really scary for you is such a like a great way to come at it so that they feel like they're okay just being themselves, right?
Mm.
Instead of telling them, "Oh, well, like, you're not allowed to be scared right now, like, man up," or "Get there faster, do it better." Like, that's not helpful. What they just need is like, "Yeah, you're really scared. You're really frustrated right now." And giving them that space to be frustrated and be scared and have, like, whatever big feelings are coming at them because they're temporary, and we can have tools to specifically, like, to deal with the big feelings, right? When they come down, then we can think about it a little bit better.
You hit on something really good, I think, about validating how they feel rather than trying to fix it. Because I think this is really a female, and I could be wrong. This is just me thinking out loud, but really a female thing where even as an adult, I'll be upset about something, and my husband will think, that I have to fix this, but really I want him to hear me. I want those feelings validated. So I think perhaps as young girls, that process, we're already in that. We don't really want it fixed or to be talked at or lectured, but just to have that empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And to learn to sit with it, to learn to like as a parent, to learn to sit with that uncomfortable feeling of my child is uncomfortable right now. And what they need from me is for me to let them be uncomfortable and show that I can be in that uncomfort, this discomfort with them as well.
Now, when you're dealing with parents, are you dealing with primarily the moms or are you also dealing with the dads too?
I would say it's mostly moms. Dads are welcome to join. I think that moms just have a really special, unique bond with their daughters in that they've usually been there. They know what it's like to be a teen, or at least they're trying to remember. And and teen girl dynamics are different. They're intense. And so they're trying to, especially with friendships, with I would say frenemies as well, like the team dynamics, that sort of stuff that gets in there. And I mean, let's be honest, moms are in the most part the primary parent and taking on that like emotional load for our kids still. So I would say, yeah, it's mostly moms coming to us. Yeah.
Yeah, many times we're the ones, like my husband was always working. So I was the one driving them to the events, driving them to the game, picking them up, perhaps staying there and watching. And so I would see more of the dynamics than my husband did. So I can see that definitely being a thing. And I was thinking too, I was wondering if there was a difference in how the moms and dads react to when their child is struggling.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I think it depends on the parent and their child. Combo is different, right? Everybody has different relationships. What I think is unique to moms and girls is just being female and having a female body. And so, especially in the teen age when we're talking about like periods and menstruation and bodies changing, most people think that, you get your period and then like you just have it for like, the next 40 years. But actually like getting your first period for the first time is like a 2-year change of your body, right? You're growing boobs, your hips are getting wider, your hormones are totally changing, and your body's preparing essentially to have a child, right? So everything's changing, and I think women we can identify with that a little bit easier with girls because our bodies are constantly changing. Whether that's our first periods and or pregnancy or menopause, and but at that very first part, it's hard for dads to imagine, when girls get injured because their bodies are growing so quickly, or they stop performing um, because their biomechanics are completely changing as well. So they're not as explosive. Their hormones are going ragey wild. Like it's really hard to relate to unless you've been there. And I would say even like most women, like we forget that it's such a massive change on our bodies, and it's more than just like going to the store and getting some pads. It's a full body shift.
It is. It really is. Because you have everything from the girl who will get her period very early to the one who might get it very late, and both might feel self-conscious, like the one thinking all my friends have gotten their period and that was me and I hadn't got it yet and I was very late and it would bother me. And then the one that maybe it's very, very early and they feel self-conscious or different in some ways. I imagine that plays into this as well.
Totally. And you know what? Like most coaches, when we talk about like rec sport, are volunteer dads, and so they don't know. Like they know their sport really well. They've been asked to show up. They volunteered their time, but they don't know about girls' bodies or girl dynamics or what's happening to their minds when they start this total body change. And so it can be a point of contention on a team. It can also be really scary for a girl who doesn't have that support on her team. And so you asked me about the difference between dads and moms. And I think that there's missing. Like, I think dads really do want to support and we need them to support. And there's often just a different dynamic.
I would agree. It's a different relationship and it should be different. What we have, the relationship with our mom as opposed to our dad, it is very different, or with our daughters as opposed to our son. Because I know from having girls and a boy, they're all grown now, but they handled disappointment and stress differently. My girls would be a little bit more vocal about it, whereas my son would internalize it and kind of try to, I've got this, I can handle this kind of thing, when in reality I knew it was disappointing or upsetting. So there's that dynamic too.
Yeah. Why do you think they handled it differently?
I think there's just, I don't know if there's really a why. I think women in general, females in general, girls in general, they do tend to talk more about, maybe it's societal expectations, maybe it is how we're wired, but we tend to talk more about when things are upsetting us. Whereas young boys, you already see that trying to get a stiff upper lip. You already kind of see that trying to hold it in and hold in that disappointment. So maybe there is still that societal thing there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. I have boys as well, and the most of my work is done with girls, and so it's really interesting to see like having vulnerable conversations and with kids. And the thing I'm going through right now is really just learning to apologize to my kids and like let them feel psychologically safe in at home and what they do. And parenting is hard, like and when it comes to them doing sports, it adds like an extra layer of stress. And recently my little one is trying, he's 4, he's trying BMX. And so I, as a sports parent, I'm like, yeah, cool, I can't wait to support him. And we go to the BMX, and he had this really heavy bike, and we traded it in for a a faster bike. And he was his first day on this bike, and he got a new tire. He was really excited, and he was like going for it. And then it this first run didn't turn out the way he wanted. Like, he couldn't get up this hill that he was like so pumped to get up. And he just like totally turned inwards, and he was like, didn't want to talk, didn't want to be there. And I'm like, do you, like, as a sports mom, I'm like, get back to the start line. Like, you can do it again. Like, it'll be great. And we have to ask ourselves, like, what does my kid actually need right now? Like, not what I need, and not what I think is right, but what does he actually need? And for my kid in that circumstance, it was he needs to leave. He is not going to feel better if he gets, I mean, he might, I think he would feel better if he got back to the start line. And I know that that's what I would need to do. But he needed to leave, and he needed to like think about what happened. He needed to like show up the next day and do practice. Like, we talked about it, and we said, like, hey, I'm really sorry that happened for you. Like, what are the feelings you're experiencing? And he's 4. So like, he doesn't have a wide range of vocabulary feelings, but he was able to tell me, like, he's just really embarrassed and really sad. And the next day he wanted to go and practice, and he wanted to get up that hill, and he wanted to do it again. And that was great, because then he showed up the next week, and the week after, and the week after. And it was just like a really small thing he had to go through. And I think all kids probably go through this too. And we have to really look inside as parents and say, okay, what does my kid need right now? As
Right.
opposed to like what I think is right.
Exactly. And sometimes that might be space. Like, okay, they got to go process this for a while, think about it.
Yeah.
And they need a little space. And maybe they don't want to talk about it. I know that was what I noticed with my son is not wanting to talk about a disappointment right away.
Yeah.
And as you were describing your situation, I could see that he needs time. He needs to go off and think about this and decide what he wants to do. So I think that's great. Now, you mentioned you have a program and it's a group program. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yeah. So we run as a cohort. It's an online program where girls can join and their parents can join too. So it's their parents also get like a playbook to go along with the course. And yeah, they can work through it on their own time, but we also meet live. And so we can connect and work through the tools together, but they also have access to it all the time. So they can do it as many times as they want. And it takes them through like pre-game and post-game and during the game and the day-to-day and how do they manage their feelings, manage their thoughts, and show up stronger for the game.
So are you walking them through kind of a process like modules like okay, we're going to focus on this and this and then are they getting together and giving one another support?
Yeah, so in our live chats, they get to support each other as well. And I have girls from lots of different places, so it's really cool that they can show up and totally different sports. And like one right now I have a Highland dancer and I have swimmers, I have ringette players, like it's different. And they're still experiencing the same things. And that whole just be a girl thing is like, oh yeah, like it doesn't matter what sport you play. Like if you're showing up and you want to be competitive, you can like also relate to somebody else that's going through these same things and support them, cheer them on, help them create their goals for the week and then complete their goals too.
Love it. Now, do you use any kind of envisioning process? Because I know I I did marathons, I did all kinds of running events, cycling events, I did the bodybuilding. Envisioning myself doing it prior to doing it was a big part of my preparation. I just naturally went there. Nobody told me to do that, but I felt that I had to see myself on the stage or I had to see myself crossing the finish line and it was a part of my preparation.
That is so intuitive of you. Like, yeah. Yeah, totally. Visioning is so awesome because it is, like you said about your brain, like your brain doesn't know the difference between what you've actually done and what you imagine to have done. If you can visualize what that feels like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, and bring all of your senses into that experience of being there and doing it and getting the result you like, then your brain believes that you've already done it and you can do it again. And I think that's just the coolest thing ever. So, yes, of course, we do breath work, we do visualization, and that's part of it, especially bringing it pre-game and visual and creating like a pre-game routine. So, whatever it is, like your sport, you can do, a 5-minute routine on visualization, breath work. One goal that I want to work on today, and then finding my hype number. Like, what do I need to do what do I need to do to get to my ideal hype number? Like, if my ideal hype number is like a 7 out of 10 and I need to be like really pumped up before I go out there, do I need to listen to some angry music? Do I need to do some breathing work? Do I have a playlist that I go to? Do I need to talk to my best friend? Right. So, like, writing out a real pre-game routine and being really secure on like, what's this going to look like to get to my ideal pre-race routine or like my ideal scenario for my race.
Right, right. I agree 100%. I think it makes a huge, huge difference. I know I had certain playlists I would listen to. I had certain podcasts I would listen to. I was the type before my foot hit the stage, I had to go inward. But of course, it's a very different sport. We weren't really a team sport. So I had to kind of block out what the other women were doing in order to stay in my lane, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I work with a girl who plays rugby, and she told me that before going out there, she actually needs to listen to really angry music. Like,
Yes.
some people need to be really calm and they need to do some yoga and some breathing and just like, not be, I self isolate, not be around people. She was like, I need to be really mad. And that's what worked for her. And I think that's amazing, like to have that self awareness to be like, this is what I need before I go out there. you know?
Yes, yes. I was the angry music type, definitely, especially in my running days, because it would really just get me hyped up. And it was funny because it was music I would never listen to on the ordinary. Like it would never be playing in my car. But when I was prepping for whatever I was prepping for, it was a part of that. So I get that completely and I love it. Now, I know you might not be able to answer this fully because you have to keep confidentiality, but what's one of the more difficult situations you have found yourself in as a coach that you've had to coach someone through? And I know once again, you have to keep that confidentiality.
I think there's a few, but one that really stuck with me was a girl who joined us several years ago. And at this point, we were more of a running club, so we were teaching girls mental health tools through running. So we would train together to run a 5K. And she would tell me, I'm not good enough. Like, why am I even trying? I'm not the fastest. I found it really hard to believe, because I was like, you're amazing and you're such a leader, you're so helpful to people. And so what I was seeing and what she was seeing was totally different. And every week we worked on it a little bit and we worked on, okay, well, I don't have the fastest, but can I be just my speed? Like, can my happy pace be a good speed for me? And she would work through these mental things and come every week and like have thought about them. And I was just so proud of her. By the end of 8 weeks, she'd been running through the finish line with her arms straight up in the air. And she did end up doing leadership for us and coming back and helping other girls and then going to university and running there. And this is the kind of thing that I think everybody deals with and not everybody says out loud. We tend to keep it inside more than we'd like to admit, I think, because it's embarrassing or confusing or scary or gosh, like who do I really want to tell that I'm not good enough or I don't belong here? I don't want other people to think that too. And so I think she was really brave to actually be able to say it out loud and for us to turn it around together.
And it loses its power when we say it out loud. That's what I've learned. I had to be an adult to learn that. But I found that once you vocalize something, like saying, I'm not good enough or I don't belong here, what am I doing? It tends to almost just deflate because you hear yourself and it's like, that's ridiculous. I know for me that was a part of it, realizing that that's not even true. I've got this limiting self-belief and it's not even true.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the work, right? Is like catching it and being able to change it. So, like, is it true? And if it's not true, then what sounds better? What sounds like slightly better or shifting it to make it sound like more helpful?
Yes. Now, what do you think the mindset, or let me reword this a little bit. I know that young girls, kids, teens, they can get injured just like adults doing a sport. I mean, if you're out there, you're training hard, the chances increase with any activity, whether it's running, you're repeating this over and over again, that you can get injured and then you have to sit out a season or maybe more than a season. And that's tough. That's tough as an adult when you have identified your identity is wrapped up. I know for a long time, mine was wrapped up in bodybuilding. And when back problems made it not very feasible anymore for me to continue, it was tough to just kind of redefine what I was about for a while.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's the thing about sport is that eventually it comes to an end, whether that is you age out or you get injured, you can't play anymore. Your friends all drop out and you drop out too, or you don't make the team, or I mean, there's many different reasons why you might have to stop sport for some reason or stop that sport for some reason. And also like when you are getting your period for the first time, a lot of coaches don't realize that your body's changing over those 2 years so transformatively that your your sport changes as well. Like it needs to change. Otherwise you end up injured. And I was one of those kids who like, I mean, in the 80s, 90s, like nobody was talking about sports injuries in that way, like to do with like girls changing bodies. And so I ended up with two braces on my knees like Forrest Gump and I was playing competitive soccer, but nobody was saying, well, yeah, you've just grown like a whole foot like over this past year or two and your body has changed. Of course, like like it's normal that your body would do that because you're going through menstruation. But like I don't think anybody ever used the word menstruation to me when that was happening. And luckily, like I was able to to get through it and continue playing. But for a lot of people, it would push them out because it leads to injury because your coaches keep coaching you the same way without knowing that your body changes. So you might need to stop doing that particular sport that you're doing and start doing more strength training, or like there's different depending on what your sport, like change it up so that it supports your body as opposed to continuing to force it to be better. Gymnastics has this big problem, right, where girls are very, very competitive from a very young age, and when their bodies change, coaches don't coach them differently. They keep on coaching and keep on pushing them to be at a higher level, but they push them to be at a higher level, and then when they stop performing um at that like super high achieving level, they kind of have to stop, and then they feel like they're not good enough. They feel sad. They feel like there's something wrong with them because they've been progressing so fast. And this is really dangerous because like they don't there's nothing wrong with them. They're still really good. They're just bodies, like you said, your body changed later, other girls' bodies changed really quickly. And that is the result in sport of that. Um and it hurts our identity. So, like, if I've been a gymnast since I was 4 years old, like, now I'm 10 and I've been a gymnast for 6 years, like, spending, I don't know, 2 to 6 hours at the gym every day. Now what do I do? How do I spend my time? Like, who are my friends? How do I eat? How do I sleep? What do I talk about if I'm not talking about gymnastics? Because it's so everything in your life. And this is it, yeah, it's just a really tricky moment to navigate. So my advice for girls that are and I think women, because this happened to me during pregnancy as well, like having a baby and having prenatal depression, and then like not knowing who I was, just all of a sudden, like, I don't exercise right now. Like I'm not an athlete. Like what do I do? And your life changes, right? And so unless you have like other hobbies, other things that you do, like where you spend your time, friends outside of sport, this is all really important things to navigate, to have while you're playing your sport, so that when it ends, because it will at some point, when it ends, you have other things to turn to, instead of just spiraling and wondering who you are.
So good. And I would think too, like perhaps a parent puts their child in gymnastics or some type of sport like that, but they're not developed yet. Like you don't know their body type, even I would think at a very young age. And there's body types that do better in certain sports. Like I did really well in running just because I'm not tall, lanky. I'm more petite, lanky, but I have long legs, long arms, naturally lean, and I just did well in that sport naturally. But I would think as a child, you're not, if you're put in really early, I hope this is making sense. And then maybe at a certain point realizing my body has changed and it's not really conducive to this particular sport.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, and it's confusing at that point, right? Like if you were always a runner, and now you have a different body that's like that just doesn't support that as much. I mean, anybody can be a runner body, so that comment doesn't make sense. But you can, yeah. What I think girls feel is that disappointment. I thought I was this, and now I'm not. And not knowing how to navigate or find something else. And so we hope that you have like a community, or if they're in school sports, they can try another sport. The idea is that we try multiple sports and we play lots of sports, especially while we're teenagers, because it uses different functions of our bodies. And we don't really know what we're going to be good at. I mean, rowers typically don't become Olympians until they're like in their 20s, whereas like gymnasts are usually, competing at the highest levels in their, 14, 15, 16. So, like, it's never too late to start sport. It's always a good time to start sport, and it's always a good time to support kids in sport, and just navigating and finding different things instead of just one, having their whole identity built into one thing.
No, I can see that having various hobbies, various interests, various sports that you can do when you hit that point where maybe you can't do what you've always done. Like I talked about the bodybuilding. And, I've had two surgeries. So I've actually had to, I related to what you said about a point where you couldn't even work out because you're healing. And that's frustrating. And it can be, you can fall into a depression, I think, even for young girls.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, the thing is with depression is like we might not know what it is, especially when you're young. I knew that I was like that I was like heading in that direction. It was like pretty clear to me, and I was able to get support. I was able to get a therapist um and support from my husband. It the thing with depression is that people often don't believe you. They're like, "Oh, just go for a walk or go outside or breathe some fresh air." And it's so much more complicated than that. And and so we really need like a whole view of our lives, which includes like, friends from different places and activities that bring in different things to your life and friends and family and community and like this sleep, right? Like all these different things add to our mental health. It's not just like going out for a walk and then you'll be not depressed. Like that's not what it is. And so when we talk about mental health, like it's so important that you have like different really supportive people in your life. And if that's not coming from a parent, maybe it's coming from a grandparent, or maybe it's coming from a coach, or maybe it's coming from like I would suggest that everybody needs at least someone that's able to support them or help them when they're in a tricky spot, because when you can't exercise and you are a athlete,
I
it's the
know.
worst.
It is the worst. It is. Not everybody enjoys exercise the same way. I've learned that being a trainer for many, many years. I've seen all types where they live and breathe it, like I can't miss a day. And then I've seen the Carol, I really don't like this, all of the things. What about, and this might sound like a very off the cuff question, but have you had a situation where a girl really didn't want to do a sport, but a parent really wanted them to do the sport, and there was this kind of tug of war going on?
But, so the first 10 years of Soul Girls, we ran this run club, and now we've switched more to like mental health tools where girls can come online and get them there because they already have their identity in sport. But when we were really more of a run club, I would get parents all the time say, "My daughter's not a runner, but," like, and I would just find it so interesting because the way I think about running, especially when we're talking to kids, is like just movement, like hop, skip, run,
Yeah.
jump, walk, like just move your body. It like it doesn't matter to me what you look like. It doesn't matter like where you come from. There you have a body, you have some legs, you can run, you can move. And that's just what we're here to do, is to talk about these really important topics and get outside and move. And work towards a goal. Right? But I think that that's a really important conversation too of like parents having different ideas around sport than kids do. And you mentioned earlier like parents living out their dreams
Yes.
when it comes to their kids' sport, and that's a real thing too, right? And sometimes it works out. Like if you look at like people like Summer McIntosh, who's top Canadian swimmer, and her mom was an Olympian as well. Like awesome, like they can share that together, and that's not everybody's situation. And I think as parents, we really need to be aware of that.
Yes, I would agree. The work you're doing is so, so important, Ashley. I appreciate that you are working with girls in this way because I think it's been much needed for some time to address that mental health piece. And I'm sure for the boys too. But as girls take a bigger role, as you see them do more types of sports, and this is really opening up right now, I do believe they need that support. And especially I'm sure as they begin to make that transition from being a girl to being a woman.
Oh, 100%. There's Yeah, gosh, I think I could talk about this all day of just like how many different ways we can support girls and into like through teens and into their adult years as their brains and their bodies change. But yeah, thank you for making the time to have this conversation, because I think it so often gets missed, when we talk about fitness and it's all like rah rah rah, like go go go, but also like that softer side of bringing it in and supporting each other. And having tangible tools to bounce back from mistakes and feel good about being themselves.
I wished I'd had that as a young teen because people didn't have those conversations. So it's wonderful to see this opening up. As we close out the show, was there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like the listeners to know that you feel is important?
I thought you had great questions. No, I really appreciate you making time. I think the number one thing that maybe we forget is how important it is for us as parents just to take an inward look of how we're supporting our kids, boys and girls. and um and getting curious, and just stay curious, and have let them have fun, let them play.
I love it. Now, as we close out, where can the listeners or people watching, where can they find you? How can they have their child or their grandchild work with you?
Yeah, so we're online. You can find us on Instagram. It's at soul_girls. Soul is like the bottom of your foot, SOLE. And soulgirlsperform.com, same SOLE. And yeah, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. On Instagram. So if you message me, I'll probably be there.
Sounds good. I'll make sure all of this is in the show notes. And Ashley, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Carol.
And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.